Modern technology brought a Korean wave that transcended borders due to its mugujo qualities, where music retains its Koreanness while borrowing elements that global audiences already recognize, which is pop. In the process, many international fans have uploaded K-pop reaction videos. The article discusses specifically the white YouTuber celebrity fan, drawing on cultural studies and audience reception theory. O argues that these reaction videos construct forms of hybridity that allow for admiration, emotional investment, and identification with K-pop idols while remaining constrained by dominant white racial and gender logics in Western contexts. So statement 1, while white K-pop reactors engage deeply with Korean culture, their hybridity remains limited because they often rely on post-racial, colorblind logic that ignores systematic racial power dynamics. The embrace of superficial multicultural difference, where one only accepts diversity when it's aesthetically pleasing or exotic, often prevents deeper discussions of systematic racism and inequality. This helps explain why white YouTuber K-pop fans rarely reflect on their own racial identities, as it feels unnecessary or believe race doesn't matter when it's about music. For instance, the Norwegian YouTuber Forme Biso discusses the prejudice and mockery she faces as a K-pop fan, yet avoids naming anti-Asian racism or white supremacy as underlying causes. This idea on post-racial colorblind logic aligns with the argument that post-racism functions to believe racial hierarchies do not exist, where one race is superior to the other. For example, in reaction to Taeyeon's Eye, several white YouTubers describe her as an angel, most likely due to her blonde hair and pale skin. While framed as admiration, these comments reinforce again Eurocentric beauty standards and the rhetoric of beauty in the West that these YouTubers now force into K-pop. Relating to Group 3's article, artists of color such as BTS are often judged as inauthentic because their creative labor is moderated, whereas white artists are assumed to embody neutrality and universality, basically called real artists. In Group 4's article, Lie, the three big K-pop companies before BTS were seen as less artists and more performing robots, lacking input over music and choreography. This contrast highlights how white fans can engage with K-pop freely, enjoying multicultural differences without being constrained by the same expectations or labels that non-white artists face. An external example of post-racial colorblind reception can be seen in My Cup TV's reaction to New Jeans' Hyper. They suggest that the song would do much better in their country when played on the radio if it were in English. After the other reactor acknowledges that this expectation is wrong, they move on from the topic, avoiding naming racism or Western cultural dominance as a reason for this claim. Now, statement 2, while K-pop reactors function as white celebrity fans, a unique group that gains both social visibility and cultural authority by blurring the lines between media reception and content production. Drawing on Grossberg's theory of effective investment, fandom is not simply consumption but an emotionally attachment that contributes to the construction of anyone's identity. In the case of white K-pop reactors, this effective investment becomes largely performative as their reactions are uploaded, monetized, and circulated to the mass. Through reaction videos, Q&As, and fan commentary, these reactors position themselves as knowledgeable cultural intermediaries, translating K-pop for Western audiences while simultaneously affirming their own cosmopolitan identities. Unlike marginalized fans, white reactors are often treated as authoritative or relatable voices, even when engaging with a culture not their own. For example, many of these YouTubers would try to decipher music videos, for example, BTS's Run, despite limited linguistic and cultural knowledge. Their interpretations rely on visual cues and Western experiences, which grants them authority within the fandom of other foreigners. This limits hybridity by centering white perspectives while leaving Korean cultural perspective, and power relations unaddressed. In Group 3's article, Eat Your Kimchi, a vlogging team appropriates K-pop by creating parody skits for commercial interest instead of sincerely learning its art form. Shimakawa's quote shows that some white expat fans' fascination with K-pop allows them to enjoy, monetize, be a leading spokesperson to the Western audience, and borrow from Korean culture without fully identifying with it. Lastly, an external example of white celebrity fandom can be seen in My TV Cup's reaction to New Jeans Ditto. At the end of the reaction video, they question if Ditto is used the same way in Korea as it does in the West and offer explanations of the music video's ambiguous narrative. By framing themselves as guides through the video's symbolism, these reactors function as cultural intermediaries for global audiences, reinforcing O's claim that white K-pop reactors acquire authority and cultural capital through fandom.
Statement number 3 demonstrates resistive hybridity by challenging Western racial and gender stereotypes. Now, David C.O. argues that these reaction videos aren't just for fun. They actually create this resistive space that takes a swing at cultural stereotypes of Asian men. For a long time, Western media has painted Asian men as either asexual or hyperfeminine. But when fans express this real, tangible desire for idols, they're subverting that entire rhetoric. We'll calls this double subversive because it takes a group that's usually marginalized in our politics of desire and centers them as objects of genuine glory. So it's not just about romance either. We can see male reactors adopting what Sun Jung calls transcultural masculinity, essentially using those soft or kopminam aesthetics to push back against the rigid macho norms that they deal with at home. Now, fans are basically poaching these meanings to build a third space where they can express themselves outside of local expectations. By humbling themselves before the Korean other, these celebrity fans are moving towards a transformative identification that actually decenters Western cultural dominance for a moment's time. Now, the external source that we've chosen for statement 3 is Jackson Wang's Magic Man solo era. A contemporary example of resistive hybridity can be seen in reactions to Jackson Wang's solo performances. While Western media has historically painted Asian men as asexual, reactions to Wang's overtly masculine and sexualized performances show fans poaching a new meaning of Asian masculinity. Now, this demonstrates a transformative identification where Western audiences humble themselves before the glory of the Korean/Asian performer. Now, in relation to the other readings, the idea that K-pop functions as a site for challenging Western gender and racial hierarchies is a consistent theme that's seen across all the studies, though it is performed differently based on the fan's background. For both for both black and white fans, expressing open sexual and romantic attraction to Korean idols is doubly subversive, because it subverts long-standing Western tropes that paint Asian men as asexual or undesirable. In the study of Black fans, this desire is further framed as a polycultural union that imagines intimacy between two groups of Black and Asian that are both marginalized by white supremacy. Now, across the readings, the adoption of transcultural masculinity or soft masculinity, quote unquote, "kopminam," allows fans to poach meanings from K pop to explore identities unbound by rigid, local, and macho norms. However, the study of white expatriate fans warns that this resistance is not always going to be progressive. Instead of sincere identification, some creators pathologize K pop's gender fluidity as bizarre or weird, ultimately recentering Western masculinity as the superior and natural norm. Now, we'd like to end it off with two discussion questions. The first one being, when a white reactor calls a K-pop idol an angel while praising their blonde hair and pale skin, is this genuine fan admiration, or is it an unconscious reinforcement of Eurocentric beauty standards? Number two, O argues that black fans use K-pop for polyculturalism while some white expats use it for Orientalism. Does the reactor's intent matter more than the impact of the video on the global audience? In conclusion, ultimately the global rise of K-pop has turned YouTube into a massive site for negotiating racial identity. Reaction videos are these complex sites of meaning making, where fans navigate their own social standing. For Black fans, K-pop is a tool for polyculturalism. They're essentially suturing their own racial identities to these transnational texts through things like code switching and playful imagination. On the flip side, White expat fans like Ichir Kimchi show us how Orientalist power dynamics can persist. When they use their privilege to call K-pop a feminized other, they're reinforcing global hierarchies instead of actually challenging them. This curator's exhibitionism reminds us that the intent matters. Are you seeking solidarity or just commercial self-esteem? The global fan community isn't a monolith. It's a contested space where hybridity can either be a resistive union or a neo-colonial tool. It's a vital reminder that the ethics of cultural appropriation are deeply tied to who the fan is and where they are standing.